all white.
Thank you to everyone who came to our program this afternoon. We really appreciate your being here. I am Elaine Landwehr, and I am one of the members of our League of Women Voters of Hastings. If any of you are not members and would like to be, please see me after the program or one of our other members. The League of Women Voters of Nebraska and of Hastings is a nonpartisan grassroots civic organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. It works to increase understanding of major public policy issues and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League does not endorse individual political candidates or political parties. Membership in the League is open to people 16 years and older of all gender identities. And today, I am very pleased to welcome Lori Stutzman. She's the Regional Director, Jody Stutzman, thank you. The Regional Director for Proteus. And I hope you're going to explain what Proteus means, because for a long time, I didn't know what that meant. And when you explained it to me, it made perfect sense. She's going to tell us about all about empowering farm workers and getting us a little bit more informed about our agricultural community. So, Jody, come on up.
First, I want to thank you all for the invitation to speak to your group. It's really important to me. Not many people know about the agricultural workers in our communities and across the state, so I always jump on the chance to explain the work that we do. And I do not exactly know which button. Does anyone know how to switch my...
I'll get Alicia.
She handed me the remote, and it's not as easy as it looks. I feel like once I start, even with my computer, once I start pressing a whole bunch of buttons because I panic, then it just makes everything worse.
Maybe you can explain what Proteus.
I actually have a slide about that. I'm prepared because that's the biggest question I think that I get asked.
How long have you been doing this, Jody?
So I graduated from Hastings College in 2007 with a degree in sociology and political science. I worked for Farm Bureau Insurance a little bit, and then in 2012, July of 2012, I started at Proteus. And then in my current role, I've been the regional director since January of 2018. So a while. I'm one of the longest tenured employees across our state, so.
Mackenzie will help you.
Thank you.
So this is you want the remote for slides?
Uh-huh.
Okay. This is I'll be back.
Do you want me to just tell me?
That makes sense, because I feel like I'm that generation was pretty techie, so.
Do you want me to just push like?
Yeah, I think if you use the arrows on the bottom right, the, should work. Yes, perfect. Perfect, thank you. So Proteus, our mission is to provide agricultural workers and their families with affordable healthcare, education assistance, and job training. Our vision is a better life for farm workers, and across our organization, all of our staff abide by these values of compassion, integrity, empowerment, respect, and communication. Okay, so this is what Proteus is. So everyone asks me, what does Proteus stand for? And I'm like, it's not an acronym for anything. So Proteus was a Greek god who could change the way he was to better serve people. Yes, thank you. So that's really what we do. Agricultural workers, I think there's a misconception out there of who agricultural workers are. So for example, what we might see on the news is that agricultural workers are just maybe migrant workers from Mexico or Hispanic, and that's not the case. It really varies state by state and the population. So what we do is really work to meet the people that we serve where they're at and adapt without judgment to help them. So the history of Proteus. Proteus was founded in 1979 in Iowa. So actually, Proteus is a U.S. Department of Labor grant through the U.S. Department of Labor. The Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act is what it is known as now. That actually has expired, and it's been a few years waiting on reauthorization. So Proteus, if I've had people apply for jobs and they look up Proteus and they tell me about Proteus in California without actually looking at the difference. So Proteus actually was a company in California that operated the National Farm Worker Jobs Program and took over the grant in Iowa. And they operated it in Iowa for a few years and then didn't want to be with Iowa anymore, so they went back to California and we just kept our name. And then in 1991, the Agricultural Health Program in Iowa launched. And then in 2010, Proteus expanded to Nebraska. But if you know anything about the federal government, it takes a little bit to get things going. So actually, when I started in July of 2012, the grant was just barely getting going, and I was hired as a career coach to actually work with the workers, and there was not a single person enrolled in our program in central Nebraska, and that changed. But then in 2013, Proteus expanded to Indiana. So we have offices in Indiana, Iowa, and Nebraska. So the National Farm Worker Jobs Program is across the country. So that's the specific program that we operate. There have been some changes through the years. So for some reason, no one wants to apply for the grant in Alaska. So there's never been a grantee in Alaska, and now it's not even an option there. It's a 4-year grant cycle. So right now, we are in year 2, so the last time was 2024 when the new 4-year cycle started, and there were some states that lost the grant. For example, there's not a National Farm Worker Jobs Program in Oklahoma, which is actually kind of quite surprising, just the agricultural landscape of Oklahoma. And then also there are some states in the Northeast that don't have a grant. And then I believe Hawaii lost the NFJP program this last cycle too. So it is really hard to find information about the number of agricultural workers in states. And so I was able to find this information through the U.S. Department of Agriculture website. What used to happen, and it's proposed that it's not going to happen anymore, but there's a NAWS survey, so it's an agricultural worker survey to get information about the number of farm workers. And so I have data that I can find from 2023. So there were approximately 37,000 farm workers in Nebraska, Kansas, North Dakota, and South Dakota from July 9th to July 15th, 2023. So in Nebraska, we think about peak season of when we get an influx of workers. And so from July 9th to July 15th, does anyone have an idea what's kind of going on in central and eastern Nebraska during that time? Detasseling. So detasseling is very manual labor intensive, so that brings more workers in. And I'll get to that point about Hastings in just a little bit. And then there were 40,000 farm workers in Nebraska, Kansas, North Dakota, and South Dakota from October 8th to October 14th, and that's during harvest. H-2A workers, that's a type of visa, so it's a very complicated process and kind of concept to understand. So H-2A visa is specifically for agricultural workers that the employers in the United States cannot find enough U.S.-born, basically, or workers in the U.S. to do agricultural work, and it's so time sensitive. That's why they need to bring in foreign labor. So in 2023, there were an estimated about 4,000 registered H-2A visa workers. When you get into states, Nebraska, I can't remember exactly on how many H-2A workers there were, but when you look in comparison to really crop-heavy states, Florida, North Carolina, California, they really lead the country on H-2A workers. What I've seen since I started in 2012, the amount of H-2A workers has increased significantly. And then I look back to the time that I detasseled when I was 12. You know, it's just times are changing where youth aren't detasseling as much as back when I was younger, just because in the summertime youth have so many activities. It's just hard to get workers. Another trend that I have seen, especially in this area and then getting into western Nebraska some, is the increase of South African H-2A workers. The one thing that about people from South Africa is the ability to speak English and their mechanical skills. It's a lot easier for employers, farmers, ranchers to communicate. So I want to go through some of the programs that we offer across all 3 states, and then kind of how they relate to agricultural in general. But Care for Yourself is a program right now that's just offered in Iowa. We share all of the same staff across all of the states, so we're brothers and sisters basically, so the programs really relate. But Care for Yourself is specific to Iowa, but if the equivalent in Nebraska is Every Woman Matters. And when I looked it up, there are only 4 clinics in Hastings that provide in the area here Every Woman Matters services. So in Iowa, for agricultural workers, we provide free breast cancer and cervical cancer screenings. I believe it's to individuals that's 16 to 64. So that's a really important program. I believe we have, during those screenings, have identified individuals that needed to seek further care. Health and safety trainings, I think this is what the majority of the people across the state and my family think I do. It's just maybe because I take so many pictures and I just love working with these people, and it's really, really important. So this has changed a bit going forward this year, but we have a contract with the Association of Farm Worker Opportunity Programs where we provide health and safety trainings to agricultural workers. So it's required that workers receive pesticide safety training every year. They were previously working on a heat safety standard, but that likely is dead in the water. Basically, that's not going to happen going forward probably. And so this is a personal story of why this matters to me so much. I remember, I'm pretty sure it was 2018. It was in July. I was sitting at the governor's summit, Governor Ricketts at the time, and heard on the news about this story that happened 2 days before this happened, I went to a migrant kind of camp at a hotel where they were staying and tried to ask the crew leader if our agency could do pesticide and heat safety training to their group of workers. They were H2A workers from Mexico. And it was a really uncomfortable situation. The guy did not know that I understood the Spanish he was speaking to me, which was very, it made me nervous for my safety. And so I kind of gave them the shirts we collected and went on my way. It was like the next day or 2 days after, I was sitting at the Cornhusker Hotel and heard on the news that there was a migrant worker from Grand Island who was missing in the fields. The heat index, I think, was like 107 that day. I don't know what it was in the cornfield. If you've been around corn, you know that it's way hotter in there. And it took over a day to find his body. He died. He was from Mexico. And so from that point on, it's been my mission since then to make sure that we reach every agricultural worker that we can to provide the pesticide and heat safety training, because it really is life or death. Something that we do in conjunction with this is we collect long sleeve shirts to give to farm workers. So that protects them from pesticide exposure, from heat, and it also is kind of an incentive to attend the training, just because they often come on buses, school buses, and there's not a lot of room. I can't imagine traveling from South Mexico to come up here, and you're here for a month, what are you gonna bring? It's not a lot. So we collect shirts to give to them. And then my most favorite thing that we do is, because it's really important to me to show appreciation and to be welcoming to people, and so we have partnered with the church and community volunteers. So every summer in July, we host a welcome barbecue, and the greatest thing about it is that there's maybe 1 or 2 volunteers that speak Spanish, but then no one else does, and we have a barbecue, and everyone brings food, and they serve food, and we just have a really good time just showing our appreciation and also being welcoming. And then we just started, so it's been going on in Hastings forever, we just started doing that in Kearney too the past couple of years. So this is the long sleeve shirts where we have boxes and boxes. People joke that my office, and it's almost embarrassing sometimes if you've been to my office and seen, I just have so much stuff and I don't have time to get it organized. I just can't thank the community enough for all they do to help. And in fact, it made my heart so happy this past summer. I ended up breaking my hip, and I just got done with surgery, and I was at the park, and one of the workers from pretty far south Mexico, he had been coming for a really long time, and he's a gentleman probably in his mid-50s, I would say, still detasseling, and he brought me a loaf of bread from Mexico. He thought about me all the way in Mexico and brought this Mexican loaf of bread, and so I just love what we do with all of these workers. Food security, so in Iowa, we do have food pantries. In Nebraska, we've worked with the food bank, the Heartland, and also we work with local food banks in case anyone has food insecurities and needs food. Something else pretty cool that we do in Iowa, and it's just a matter of when I can have time to do stuff like this in Nebraska, it's just I cover a really large area across the state, but they have what's called a PASO program, and I believe that Tito's Vodka is one of the sponsors of this program. But we have families that are identified where once a month they get boxes of fresh produce, and then our clinical director works with them on healthy eating and kind of how to prepare it all. So we're really proud of that program and just what we can do to encourage healthy eating. It's something that is really sad. We all know the price of produce when we go into the store, so many times the people that are working, picking and harvesting the food can't even afford it in the grocery stores. Water for farm workers. We every summer, especially after the farm worker died due to the heat exposure, we get hydro flasks or water bottles that we have a fundraiser for, where they can take it with them in the fields and kind of clip it onto their belt. A lot of times, at least I know how I am, I run outside when it's hot, and guys tend to think, oh, I'm okay, I'm a man and I don't need to worry about staying hydrated, and so we really work to teach them. And this is, I just had to include this picture too, because on the bottom, I wasn't wearing them that day, but this farm worker and me have the same shoes. He's wearing the same shoes that I got, so we kind of joked about that. And so, as you can see, he is not young, and so he still comes to Nebraska every summer to detassel corn, and they just love it and they're so proud of their work. So our agricultural health program, this is kind of important because it's something new that I'm kind of working on in Nebraska. But in Iowa, we served over 1,800 farm workers and their families by providing primary care. So in Nebraska, there's an organization in Scottsbluff that provides healthcare services to agricultural workers. But then when you get further east, I think they just serve Scottsbluff, that county, and Imperial and around there. So all that way, there's not an organization that works with agricultural workers and meat processing workers for healthcare. And so we know that those types of workers are working long days. They don't get paid time off to go to the doctor. So what we do is we have mobile clinics. So we go out into the field. So a lot of times we're set up at Bayer, formerly Monsanto, to do healthcare clinics. We have offices, we do prescriptions, all sorts of stuff to help agricultural workers. And so that's an example of our pharmacy and how we just set up and do mobile clinics. It's actually one of the only kind in the country that are providing mobile services. We actually just got, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 big vans to go out and actually provide healthcare services. I know, we're coming on, 6 years since the pandemic started, but this is something that was really challenging. It was a very challenging time for us because all of our staff are out meeting with people where they're at, but for our COVID response, we gave out over 5,000 face masks, the health program, and then we partnered with health districts in Nebraska, and we did close to 2,000 COVID tests, and then with the state partners, it was close to 3,000. So health in Nebraska, this is something that I have been kind of begging for forever, just because I see the need for healthcare and access to healthcare. So we got a grant through the Sherwood Foundation that I just hired a staff person, actually next door in my office, to work on a needs assessment for healthcare services for agricultural workers and meat processing workers. So right now we're identifying healthcare providers, employers, community partners, and then going to do focus groups for to learn more about what the needs are and the barriers. So really proud of that. In the past several years, we've worked with UNMC. So it wasn't last summer, it was the previous summer, I partnered with them. They were doing a study, and that's kind of what an educational institution has to call it, a study. But basically, we were able to do health fairs to workers here in Hastings and at a fairly large employer in Columbus. And I was shocked. They were H2A workers, but the health care they receive in Mexico, they don't go to the doctor. They don't go to the doctor here. And it was funny because they laughed about it, but it was also kind of sad. They were joking with each other because they had to get their blood drawn for diabetes testing, and they were really worried about how long the needle was going to be. So they were joking with each other, like, is this long, is this long? And so, but after that, they got a card listing like all of their results, and then at least it was a starting point. This is the part that we do that no one knows about, and I don't even think my family understands, and I've been doing this for a while. So in Nebraska, we have offices in Lincoln, Hastings. I closed the North Platte office because it was challenging to hire out there, so I moved that to North Platte, to Kearney, but she covers North Platte. And then I closed my Scottsbluff office, so then that means that I'm going to Scottsbluff to help people. But so what we do, agricultural work is changing. It used to be a lot of manual work, but through the years it's really changed where you don't need as much manpower. And I think about Scottsbluff with the sugar beets. They used to have so many migrant workers that come for the sugar beet harvest, but really with the advancement in pesticides, herbicides, different stuff like that, the manual labor through the years has decreased. But then you also have to look at, there's been the use of that and how stuff's becoming resistant to those. So it might be changing. So we work to help people that have done agricultural work get job training so that they could fill what Nebraska calls H3, high wage, high demand, and high skill positions. So every employer that I've talked to through the years has said, bring me farm workers because they know that they're reliable, they're hard workers, and they're going to work till the job gets done. So that's our main affiliation with the U.S. Department of Labor is that National Farm Worker Jobs Program. We understand not everyone has the luxury or the time to be able to go to school. So I was in Lexington just right after Thanksgiving for a community meeting regarding the Tyson plant closure and kind of what we were going to do about that and how different people could help. And so then the first week I had to take a mandatory vacation in December. So it was the second week I went to Lexington for a job fair. And while meat processing doesn't qualify as farm work for agricultural work for us, I always tell people that animal has to be alive, and so, but there's quite a correlation between people that have done meat processing work and that have done agricultural work. So I went there to Lexington to kind of see how I could help, and after talking to a lot of people there, I was surprised at the amount of people that, we weren't going to be able to help people that have worked at Tyson for, 20, 30 years, but there were some people that were new to Tyson who had come from, of course, like feedlots and done agricultural work in that area, and, they're losing their job the 20th, so in about a little over a week. So what our staff can do is help them create resumes, do job applications, because when you're working in farm labor, you're not necessarily, sitting down with an interview. You're talking to a rancher or a farmer and saying, I have this experience, and he's like, okay, you're hired. So it is making that transition can be difficult. So our staff do a wonderful job with that. Work-based learning, that's really a trend in workforce development, and I'll share a quick story because I think it really explains how we can help and really kind of what the challenges of farm workers in our area are. So this is way back when I was a career coach helping one-on-one with people. There was a student at GISH, Grand Island Senior High. His mom did not speak English. He spoke very little English, and he was a student there, also with a learning disability. And it was really challenging for that family to understand the school system and all the different help that he needed. His disability was in reading and math, and so we have the funds where I talked to the Grand Island Public Library, and we basically set up a paid internship. So what he did was he read books to little kids during story time, so it would help him with his English. And then he also put books away on the shelves, which helped him with the numbers. And it also showed when he was talking to, like when he was going to get his next job, maybe he wanted to, I don't know, student, maybe he wanted to work at McDonald's, I don't know, he would have something on his resume or could put on a job application that he had the skills. So, I always tell my staff now, do as I say, not as I did. So I just remember always going into their home and doing everything I could to help them, and I take him to appointments sometimes, and so it's things like that really make a difference. We have offices, in Hastings, for example. I don't expect anyone to travel to our office. All of our staff go out into the community and help people. So whether that's meeting at a public library, a school, coffee shop, any place. Education assistance, this is a really big one. We help people. We know that a lot of jobs, at least H3, high wage, high skill, high demand jobs, you need to have some sort of education to fill those jobs. We don't want to put someone in kind of a low paying job where they're not going to be able to be self-sufficient. So what we do is we work with community colleges and training providers across the state to help pay for tuition. We do a $6 per hour stipend for each class hour they're in class as a way to help kind of offset and pay some bills while they're in class, but it's also a really good incentive to go to class when you're getting paid. So we work, Central Community College is awesome, but all of the community colleges across the state. In fact, over Christmas, I had a worker come into my office who just had an incredibly sad and difficult story. And so he wanted to get his CDL. He had just been laid off for his job. So he wanted to get his CDL. That cost $5,000 to go to school to get your CDL. Who can pay for that? I know that there's some in the workforce and the education world. There's some talk of workforce Pell, where maybe Pell grants you could use for that type of non-credit training, but that's not the case today. So what we were able to do is pay that $5,000 training for him to get his CDL, because we know that the wages for CDL workers are extremely high, and there's a major need for drivers, and he wants to stay in agriculture. So what I always tell people is the agricultural workers in our state and across the country, they just need to know about resources and just a little help, and then they're helping our communities. I've really changed the way that I talk about agricultural workers, is that, and what we do, is that yes, we're helping a family and helping future generations, but we're really helping the community. And then I think this is my last slide. It's just two stories to really highlight and put a face to agricultural workers in the state. The person on the left, Morel, he's actually from Imperial. He did not want to go to college, and then I had a transition where I lost a staff member, so I was trying to figure all that out, and I had never met him, and I'm like, he's gonna think I'm a crazy lady because I'm just texting him saying, I know you could go to college, I know you can do this, and then one day out of the blue, he's like, yes, I enrolled at NCTA in Curtis, and he finished, it's a 2-year program, he studied agribusiness. He finished it in a 1.5 years. When I was approving all of his payments and stuff, I'm like, that's weird, NCTA does 20 plus credit hours a semester. And then when he told me he was graduating early, then I realized, wow, you took on a full load, and he was second in his class, I believe, and so he moved back to Imperial. He got married, and his wife's family is from Hastings. His father-in-law is a chiropractor here, and just the best story. And one day he sent me an email saying, Jody, are you going to come to my graduation? And I got a little teary-eyed because it just meant so much to me. And I was sitting in the crowd, and someone's grandma was sitting next to me, and she's telling me about her granddaughter and how excited she was, and she's like, oh, who are you here for? And I'm like, oh, just a guy I know. And then also Jade on the right, Jade's from Lexington. Her mom was a migrant farm worker, kind of worked all around and transitioning between here and Mexico. She graduated from Lexington. School wasn't necessarily her thing. We really helped her through it. She graduated from NCTA as a vet tech, and her first semester, her grades, I'm like, I don't know about this, but then she just worked so hard. She passed and became a licensed vet tech. I enrolled her mom into the program and her brother when he was at Lexington High, and he joined the military and is just a fantastic guy himself. So I think that it's really important to share pictures of faces because people don't understand, and I think once you see a face and hear their story, it really changes the way that you think about people. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, I could just go on and on about the stories of the people. I've been here since 2012. I think I remember everyone from Hastings that we've ever helped, and I'm pretty good at remembering them across the state, and so it's really important to me to remember stories to be able to share them with people like you also. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions?
Other than being aware, what can people do other than give you shirts?
It's a good question. So if you have expertise in different things, like we're just starting our healthcare program, trying to figure that out. But I also think, and this sounds a little silly and naive, but just when you hear people talking, if you could be like, one day I was sitting in a meeting for League of Women Voters, and I heard this story about an agricultural worker and all that they did and all they contributed, and that's not necessarily jiving with maybe what you heard. And so I think that's important, is just sharing the impact, because if we didn't have agricultural workers coming to our state, we wouldn't be able to eat, we wouldn't be able to drive, we wouldn't be able to do a lot of things just because how much agriculture is integrated into everything that we do. We do have, I think, something that I really want to get started. I didn't include it in here, but we have a youth leadership program called Field. But what and trying to match mentors, but what I think is really important, and some of the people that get forgotten are the people that are maybe a little bit older, and so having some sort of mentoring for older people outside of the traditional 18 to 24 that you might think of, helping them transition through stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with Bridging Forward, but that is a program that really has seen a lot of success with mentoring.
How many staff members do you have locally?
Locally, I have 2 people in my Hastings office. One person, she's a career coach, and the other one is a program specialist. The difference is the program specialist is kind of a helping role and is also helping me with the health stuff that we're doing. We have, I believe, 6 staff across the state, so we're very lean. So what I always tell people, because there's a whole big thing about government efficiency, we are a very small staff, but we do a lot with the amount of money that we have, and we're impactful. I didn't say this, but we are, so in the U.S. Department of Labor, the Employment and Training Division, there are several workforce training programs across the country. The National Farm Worker Jobs Program, what we do, is one of the most successful, and across all of the grantees that have the National Farm Worker Jobs Program, Nebraska is one of the most successful across the country. So we're really proud of that, and how we do little, we do a lot with very little.
So they're mostly covered financially by grants.
Yes, through U.S. Department of Labor. Yep. Our health and safety trainings, EPA has done some different stuff that I don't foresee us being able to do what we did before with that money, so we'll just have to look for something else to help us with that.
So when we give Hastings Day, we see Proteus on there. How does those funds?
Yeah, so last year what I did with those funds is buying a lot of water bottles to help and do with our trainings. We did bandanas where I had printed health and safety kind of best practices, like if you see your coworker, like kind of signs of heat exposure, and so they always take those with them. I think you saw a picture. It's easy, like put it under your hat, kind of the shade. So something that we could think of to help with that. So a lot of stuff that, because good or bad, I guess, U.S. Department of Labor with our grant, there's a lot of restrictions. And I will say with our job training grant through U.S. Department of Labor, like all the job stuff, we do only help people that are authorized to work in the United States, so we can only help people who have a work permit, legal permanent resident, or citizenship. Yeah.
My question goes back to about the third screen that you had with the numbers, and the bottom was the number of people on H-2A visas.
Mm-hmm.
Are there multiple types of visas that farm workers use? How long can they stay before they need to go home?
Yeah, with the H-2A visa, that is specifically attached to a certain employer, and that you can't work in the United States for over a year. So for example, there's an H-2A worker that I was working with in Hastings. Every December, the work would be done. Every December, by law, he'd have to go home to South Africa and come back. there's a lot of talk in the agricultural community, and there have been some changes. It's a very difficult process. It's very expensive for H-2A workers. There's what's called an adverse wage rate, kind of divided by region across the United States, so that they have to be paid a certain amount so that it doesn't affect local wages. And something that I'm not as familiar with, I saw it a lot when we were doing some USDA work last year, is what's called a TN visa. That's a type of agricultural visa. It's more linked to, I saw it a lot with the hog farms, that type of visa there, so I don't really understand that one as much, but I know that you could stay in the United States for a longer period of time. I'm on the Greater Nebraska Workforce Board, and talking to someone that works a lot in hog production, there's some challenges there too, so.
Anything else? All right, let's thank Jody for coming today.
Thank you.
All right, in 2 weeks, this is a member program only. We'll review legislation. So if you'd like to review legislation, become a member and you get to come. But our next program that's free and open to the public, so on your calendars, our next program that's free and open to the public is February 13th on Friday. It will be Bree Wiltland from the Department of Education, and we will be meeting at ESU 9. So please note that on February 13th, we will be meeting at ESU 9, and that program is free and open to the public. Bree Wilton from Department of Education will be coming to speak with us. All right, thank you very much for coming.